But we're going to begin this half hour with a new effort by Casey Anthony's legal team to block the possibility that she will face the death penalty if found guilty of murdering her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee. NBC's Kerry Sanders is in Orlando with details. Kerry, good morning to you.
Well, good morning, Meredith. Casey Anthony's legal defense team has come to court here this week, throwing just about every argument at the new judge to take the death penalty off the table. It's an emotional, high-stakes debate, but the new judge says he sees no legal reason to stop prosecutors for asking for the ultimate penalty, execution.
Tears and more tears from Casey Anthony as her mother Cindy sits anxiously in the courtroom.
How do they intend to prove that?
Together hoping they could get the death penalty dropped from the case.
Why it is that they are saying that they can show this premeditated homicide when their own medical examiner cannot determine a cause of death.
Kaylee's official cause of death is homicide by undetermined means, a rare conclusion by the medical examiner, who had limited forensics to work with. That's because Kaylee's skeletal remains, pieces of duct tape, and clothing were found in the woods near her home 6 months after she disappeared. While Casey says she's innocent that her daughter was abducted, prosecutors have said before in graphic detail how they believe Casey looked down on her daughter as she smothered her to death with duct tape stretched across her tiny mouth. Maybe her killer even saw her eyes as the tape was applied, prosecutor Jeff Ashton says. First 1 piece, then 2, then 3, so that no breath was possible. The new judge in the case,
dismissed indictment will be denied,
has established a fast-paced agenda.
Denied the request, motives will be denied.
But what about those snapshots the defense once eliminated as evidence? Pictures of Casey Anthony out on the town. Some taken long before, but others snapped during the 31-day period when Casey failed to tell anyone her daughter was missing.
These statements are nothing short of outrageous. To assume that a person is a bad person because they go to a nightclub.
Prosecutors say the photos are relevant and important to a jury.
Exactly what her activities were during the specific time frame.
Women rarely face the death penalty. Only 2 women have ever been executed in Florida.
If the prosecution can prove that a mother intentionally murdered her own child in order to pursue a wild social life, then this is indeed a death penalty case.
Defense experts say those pictures will taint a jury into believing Casey's a bad mom, so she must be guilty.
If we're talking about a woman defendant, and if that woman defendant was deviant, she's likely to get tagged for it and be very difficult to defend successfully.
They even played this videotape for the judge to show the circus-like atmosphere surrounding the case.
I believe that the mother is guilty.
Judge Belvin Perry says finding a fair jury in Orlando is unlikely. His plan? Pick jurors in another Florida city and bring them to Orlando for what could be a 2-month-long trial.
The judge did decide that prosecutors must explain in writing why they're pursuing a death penalty case, and that essentially will provide a roadmap to the defense as to how and why they believe that Casey Anthony allegedly killed her daughter, Kaylee. Meredith?
All right, Kerry Sanders, thank you. Dan Abrams is NBC's chief legal analyst. Good morning to you, Dan.
Good morning, Meredith.
Let's talk about the onus that's on the prosecution right now. What do you need to convict someone in a death penalty case in Florida?
Well, you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt, first of all. But in order to get the death penalty, you have to have aggravating circumstances, aggravating factors. And that's what the defense is waiting for. They're saying, all right, what are those aggravating factors in this case? In this case, expect them to be premeditation, the cruel and heinous nature of the crime, the age of the victim, and the fact that it was her daughter, and now the fact that she's also a convicted felon because she was convicted recently, pled guilty in connection with putting forward false checks.
Well, you know, when the defense, though, argued unsuccessfully to try to get this death penalty off the table, one of the things they said was, how can this be premeditation when, in fact, the medical examiner has never indicated the cause of death? We don't know the cause of death.
That's an argument for the jury, in effect. I mean, what the defense is trying to do is they're trying to say, look, as a legal matter, we want the death penalty off the table. very tough argument for the defense in every case, because the burden is on the defense to be able to prove that there have been improper motives on the part of the prosecution, that there's no legal basis at all for this. Very, very hard, and not surprising that this judge has said that it can move forward. But this is just the very first step.
Did the defense have a point, though, when they said they tried to argue that there is an inherent bias against women who are accused of violent crimes, particularly accused of killing their children?
Whether they had a legitimate argument sort of broadly as a societal matter, maybe. As a legal matter, it's not a strong argument. Meaning, this would then suggest that almost any woman accused of killing her child shouldn't face the death penalty because there is this supposed bias. So I think this argument was a non-starter from the beginning.
But so it's not a case where women tend to be in that position more than men because of their gender.
Well, I think that what they were saying in effect was it's not going to be fair, that a jury won't be able to fairly evaluate the evidence because she's a woman, because she's a mother, because these pictures are going to come up, etc. That's an argument that they can try to make at a later date. It is not an argument that I think had any weight at this point.
And finally, it was the defense that wanted a new judge brought into this case, and they have one now in this Belvin Perry. Is that a win for the defense?
Be careful what you ask for. They had asked to disqualify the previous judge, saying that he had some sort of connection to a blogger who had strong feelings about the case. They got that judge removed, and now they've got a judge who may be even tougher on them than the previous judge. So you always have to be careful when you're seeking to dismiss a judge in a case, because you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, Dan Abrams, thank you very much.
Good to see you.
You too.